Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 2, Episode 22, A Bad Day in the Valley, the last episode in this season, written by Donald L. Gold and Lester Burke and directed by Jerry London. The episode begins with Jim on a date with a former love interest who is surprised he accepted.
Oh, let's just say I was curious.
She is Karen Stiles, played by a returning Susan Strasberg.
3 years is a little more than just an interlude.
After a somewhat tense conversation, Jim warms back up to her and they arrange a date for the next day.
I've got 2 tickets to the tennis matches tomorrow. Would you like to come?
But Karen asks him to drop off a briefcase of paperwork for her on the way, which he does, only to be followed by a solitary goon. Jim does as requested, but while waiting for a receipt, he's arrested. He soon finds out from Dennis that the case actually contained $100,000 in cash. Counterfeit cash.
This is what you delivered.
So I was wrong.
It seems as if Karen has dropped him in it, claiming the cash she put in the case was real and he must have switched it. She was scamming Jim from the start. Beth arrives, unable to do much for him, and more than a little jealous, Jim was on a date.
Did I say anything? I'm your attorney, not your keeper.
Rockford doesn't want to believe Karen would do this to him, but can't find any other option. Luckily, Dennis comes in with good news. They're dropping the case against him.
Everything's been all cleared up. You're free to go.
This is a great opening, lots of mystery and intrigue from the beginning, with Jim as clueless as we are as to what's going on. He's followed home by the initial goon and the obligatory second goon before he decides to find out what's really going on, by grilling Karen.
I didn't set you up. I didn't tell you about the money because...
You didn't tell me because you didn't trust me.
She claims to be clean, but Jim knows her past as a professional con artist and is convinced it's not a past, but a present. She agrees to clear his name and tell the police who she got the phony money from, but is kidnapped by the goons before they can get there. Getting away in Karen's car. The way they manage to keep Karen as a potential suspect here is rather brilliant, as we see Jim bounce back and forth from trusting her and not, although here he trusts her while we do not. Jim's next stop is the guy Karen claims gave her the money, Tony Lederer, but is greeted by his wife Sandy, played by Veronica Hamill.
Yes, what can I do for you?
Are you Mrs. Lederer?
That's right.
Who is now separated from her husband and has recently been robbed, potentially by him.
Is there another way out of here besides the front driveway?
Why?
I'm being followed by the FBI. I'd like to lose them.
Dennis explains that Karen's father wasn't just a con man like her, but also an expert counterfeiter. And Jim starts to realise what we already suspected, that Karen kidnapped herself.
She kidnapped herself.
Jim then discovers the PI Mrs. Lederer hired to follow her husband to find out if he did rob her, and quizzes him about Tony's whereabouts. But the PI is sharper than Jim's usual targets and knows exactly who Rockford is.
Yeah, I know who you are. I study all my competition.
But is still willing to give up that Tony and Karen were having an affair. No closer to an answer as to what's going on, he's followed by Karen's goons, who take him to see Karen. She claims she had a deal with Tony to buy some land, but when he backed out, she tried to use her father's fake money to make up the funds, and wants Jim to track Tony down.
I'll even cut you in on the real estate deal.
Oh, gee, this is turning out to be my lucky day.
Jim rejects the offer, but is thoroughly confused by the whole affair, particularly the theft of Sandy Lederer's jewellery. He then has a brainwave, as Karen's uncle was a safecracker, so tracks down the fence she used, who says the jewellery was paste, which sends him to the insurance company. At this stage in the story, with very little time left, there's a lot of new plot points to squeeze in. And the way it's done might seem too easy, but thanks to the way it's constructed, using a friendly criminal as a go-between, means it feels authentic. All of this culminates with Jim telling Karen he knows she and Tony robbed Sandy Lederer, but he took off with the jewels before they could make the land deal, switching them for paste copies. Jim is able to track down Tony, perhaps a little too easily here, explained away by a line of dialogue.
How did you find Tony?
I checked in the power and light office. They said this place was in use.
And he tries to make a run for it, as he was conning Karen from the beginning. This would seem to be an end of it, but Karen doesn't like the idea of getting caught, so wants Jim killed.
It suddenly appears to me that you're a terrible problem, and I don't see any other solution to this.
Luckily, Dennis shows up in time to save the day. As I said, this is a great mystery that never lets up, adding more intrigue and complexity as it goes on. And although the ending is a little rushed, it doesn't detract too much from the story. Where the episode really succeeds, though, is showing us how Karen just can't help but be deceitful, cunning, and downright villainous to save her skin, and yet still make a compelling case as to why Jim still likes her.
He liked her, Dennis. That's all.
Even after she's tried to have him murdered. As an audience member, you aren't quite as convinced by her as Jim, but you can perfectly understand why he retains feelings for her, even after everything he's been through. And that's no mean feat. I do think there was an opportunity to expand this into a two-parter, giving the story a little more time to breathe, as the pace is pretty breakneck, but it's not a huge detraction. Also, Jim operates in a rare middle ground in this one, where he is neither ahead or behind the plot, but just gets sort of carried along with it, making the ending a little unsatisfying. All in all, it's one of the more forgettable episodes without there being too much wrong with it, but probably shouldn't have been the series closer. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.